has watched nearly every adaptation of Peter Pan and has a soft spot for that lost little boy, even if the original story is a tad bit dark for this modern telling. Thanks, Disney. No, look, so when it was originally written, it was a dark story that can be interpreted as death, essentially in a bottle. But then you watch this 2023 version, which was originally supposed to come out about a year or so ago, but COVID had other plans. It was like, hey, you don't get to finish your film. Anyway, now that it's out, I finally had a chance to watch it. And, well, yeah, it's a pretty forgettable Peter Pan storytelling. Yes, okay, it's more about Wendy and Peter and the Lost Neverland, right? But there is so many things that you can see in it that you're like, no. Okay, so first up, in the first few moments of the story, you can already tell it's a different version. You can already see that Wendy is a lot more adventurous than her previous counterparts. You can also see that the children know a lot more about Peter Pan. To them, Peter Pan is a nursery story. To them, Peter Pan is a bedtime story. To them, they know of Peter Pan. They know of Tinkerbell. They know of Captain Hook. They know of Neverland. So you already get a sense of like, okay, well, what's the point of watching this if you already know the story? Because we already know the story. Give us something refreshing. But then it also shows you that Wendy is supposed to be off on her own little adventure. She's supposed to go to boarding school. Instead, Peter comes in through the night and whisks her away. But what I'm used to, and I think this is more the fact that what I'm used to, is that I'm used to seeing them tiptoe around Peter Pan and Tinkerbell and the three children not knowing who they are. Sorry, apologies. So, with them, in the previous tellings that I'm used to, is that Peter Pan and Tinkerbell sneak into the room and kind of whisk the three children away. But because the three children know who they are, it's not a shock to the system. It's not a surprise. It's not a, oh no, why is there a strange little boy in my room? It's like, no, let's help this little boy find his shadow. Let's help this fairy wander around our house and not give a damn. Yeah, it just felt really off. And look, even with Tinkerbell, look, okay, so this may be white privilege showing itself, so I do apologize. But even though I'm used to the blonde hair, white little fairy, I don't care that she's black. Yes, I'm used to it, but I don't care. Tinkerbell can be whatever she wants to be. But what I did care about is, why is Tinkerbell not wearing shoes? The whole point of Tinkerbell's outfit is she's wearing shoes. So, like, where's her shoes? That's the thing I am mad about. Where's Tinkerbell's shoes? Another thing I am mad about when it comes to Tinkerbell is that in previous storytellings of Tinkerbell, she is a fairy who is adventurous. She's a fairy who's silly, who's playful, who's very, I guess, fun to watch on screen. But then watching this version of Tinkerbell, she's just there as a decoration. She's there as nothing more of as a, oh, the story only works because she's tied to Peter Pan. Oh, the story only works because, well, without Peter Pan, we're going to get crucified without having Tinkerbell. So she isn't there for the right purposes. She feels just shoved into the story and forgotten about. Which is really kind of sad because, like, Tinkerbell has her own little life. There is Tinkerbell movies and TV shows that show she's a quite adventurous little fairy. Why wasn't that put into the story? Another thing that I realized is that this story relies heavily on special effects and CGI, which, I mean, in theory sounds fine, because how are you going to recreate late Victorian era, right? How are you going to recreate people flying and that sort of jazz? But the problem is, because they rely heavily on special effects and CGI, it's a question of, is this too fake to believe, or is this too real to be real? So you sit there going, okay, well, what's that line? Are you using CGI or is this real? And then my mind's just like, nah, this is fake. So it's a really hard line to tiptoe. Jude Law, he plays Captain Hook. I have a small problem with Jude Law. For some reason, I don't like him. I don't know why. I've seen a lot of films with him in, and he's not for me, and I can't figure out why I don't like him. But watching him as Captain Hook, he's trying to be Dustin Hoffman. He's trying to do Dustin Hoffman's interpretation of Hook, but the problem is Dustin Hoffman did it so over the top, so comical, so very burnt in your memory that you can't think of anyone else's Hook. So as Jude Law's Hook, you're like, he's trying to be Hoffman, and it doesn't work. He can't be his own version of Hook. He can't be this late Victorian pirate. He can't be this pirate that you want to fear and who has this sense of wanting to be the bad guy, but also has a phobia of crocodiles. Even with Hook's storyline, they put a backstory in with Hook, and you're sitting there questioning, going, why? Why is there a backstory for Hook? Why do we need to know that he was a lost boy? Why do we need to know that he ran away from Peter Pan because he was missing his mommy? None of the adaptations put a Hook into that storyline, and this is something that Jude Law and the director both did themselves, and it does not fit with this telling. Another thing that I hated, the Lost Boys. The Lost Boys are literally called the Lost Boys, so why are they unisex? That isn't needed in this story. Another thing that I had an issue with the Lost Boys is they seem too house-trained. The whole point of Lost Boys is that these are little boys who are lost in the wilderness. The little boys who are adventurous, who climb trees and have no fear. Well, they're boys, so of course they have that typical fear, but they were a group of unisex, boys and girls, and they just seemed like, well, we're just outside playing a little game rather than being chaotic little children. They were just like, oh, our mom hasn't called us in for dinner yet, so we're just going to keep having some fun. And it was really hard to believe that these were lost children. Another issue, look, I love that Tiger Lily was finally in a story, but they shoved her in. I get that they were using Tiger Lily as a point of, well, look, Native Americans ain't savages, but like, she was lost in this story. And when she was on screen, it almost felt like she was trying to steer the story towards Tiger Lily rather than towards Peter Pan. So you're watching almost two different storylines. And it was a waste because I'm like, she could have been valued so much more. But you wanted to use it as a point of Native Americans aren't savages. And it was like, okay, we know they aren't, but you're doing this wrong. Give her a bit more time to stretch her wings and fit into the story. Look, for me, Peter and Wendy feels like it's trying to be modern while disguising itself as a backdrop of the late Victorian era, and it doesn't work. There is so many so many ways that they went through this story that it's like, okay, we expect you to know who Peter Pan is, we expect you to know who Wendy is and the Lost Boys is, but everything you know is just going to be retold, but with a modern telling. Even with Hook's hand, we know that Hook has a phobia of a crocodile, in particular a ticking crocodile. They kind of made it seem a bit weird. They forced in the ticking crocodile, but for all the reasons that it didn't need to be in there. So there is more things to hate about this story than actually to like about this story. And I get that in the versions that we are so accustomed to, that Wendy's mother, so Wendy Darling, Mama Darling, is the one who knows of Peter Pan. And she's supposed to pass that storyline down to her children. But I feel like everything in this story is just so forced, and it doesn't flow as natural as you think it should. The thing about Peter and Wendy is that it's going to be a forgettable story version of Peter Pan. We remember Finding Neverland. We remember the various adaptations of Hook. We remember the book, which is a lot darker than Disney likes us to believe. But this does not work. And it really sucks because I was having high hopes. I was like, it could work. I would love an adaptation. Or at least a new one anyway, after how many decades? But no, this sadly does not work as a Peter Pan story. Even if it's more centered around Wendy and Peter. It just feels so off. And I can guarantee you, after I finish making this video, I'm going to be like, so what did I just watch? What was that movie again? What was it about? If I didn't have it written in front of me, I would have been like, I have no idea what I was talking about and what I'm talking to you about. So yeah, it's pretty forgettable and definitely won't be remembered down the track, unfortunately.